Hello everyone, good to be back. It's my second home. I always talk about WA. I'm not keen on being trapped here, so I'll probably step down in a little while. I feel trapped behind desks and everything like that. So I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey today, and hopefully it'll feel, I'm going to step down now because I'm blinded, hopefully it'll feel a bit uncomfortable at some stage for all of you, because that's where we have opportunities to grow and learn as part of this. I'm happy to share my presentation in whatever way is useful as part of that. And I've always had a great belief. I've been in Australia now since 2004. As you can see, not much impact on the accent, and it probably never will. But it is about what we can imagine it to be, because then we can influence it. We can't control it. We'd love to be able to control it, but we can't. But we can influence it. Our presentation today is very much about making sure that educators are at the forefront of that. Otherwise, people from business, corporate spaces might be at the forefront of it. So I'm doing some work with a company called Holland IQ. It's one of the things I do, and I really enjoying their interactions. Do a lot of good data around what's happening, and from a business perspective as well as an education perspective. But they talk about education will be a $10 trillion business by 2030. Now that's huge, isn't it? And to think that big businesses aren't going to have their eyes on that, already have their eyes on it, will be naive. So, and I want to make sure that educators are at the forefront of what emerges, as opposed to it being your Mark Zuckerbergs or people like that, because we know that doesn't always ended well for us. The other bits are so busy. Recognise how busy we are in school environments, and that's hopefully what I help people do, is help stay aware of what's happening. I'm lucky enough, I'm not directly in a school, and so I've got capacity to think and to spend time looking around, as opposed to being so busy with operational stuff and trying to lead as well as the busyness of it all. And I also saw this recently, it did make me smile. It's all about change. It's never-ending change, isn't it, in many ways? But everyone says it should change, but they don't want to change, and very few people want to lead change. And literally Wednesday night, caught up with my good friend and colleague over here, Fiona, who's just about, and so it resonated, so that's why I decided to put it up there, about lead now, lead next. That idea of core dimensions for school leadership for the future. And it's so hard, given the jobs you do that are so busy, increasing demands and expectations on your time, to be able to be aware of what's on the horizon. How do you have that capacity to do that, as well as do a really good job in your workplaces here and now? So hopefully one of the things I'll do now and want to continue to do is help people be aware of what's on the horizon. In terms of a model leadership at the moment, I think Jacinta Ardern is one of the people, isn't she, sort of really leading. I really like this quote. It's around global climate change, but I think it is an important one that we make decisions and stand by those decisions. So we're at different ages in this room looking around. Some people are a lot closer to retirement than others. But we want to leave a legacy, even those of us who are nearer to that age of retirement. What sort of environment, education support environment, what sort of world do we want to leave for our children or grandchildren? And we can make a difference here and now. So we can't control things, but we can influence things. And I'm a big believer that we have impact where we want to have impact. And some of this very much depends on our viewpoint, our mindset. So I want you, for the moment, on your tables, and so I'm going to give you little activities to do, and I know it's always difficult getting you back, but I much for it to be interactive and just listening to me for the time available. I want you to think about, so are you someone who is positive, think the future is largely going to go well? Or are you someone who's really concerned, pessimistic about the future? So the simple word, are you optimistic about where the future is headed? There's no right answer. There's something I picked up from one of my readings. Some of you might have heard me talk about it, called a BRULE. And that stands for a bullshit rule. You've got to be positive. You are who you are. Know what you stand for. And that's be comfortable with that is a really important part of all of that. But are you optimistic about the future, or are you pessimistic? So there's two bits to this, then I'll let you have a conversation. So that's optimistic, pessimistic. Are you, I can influence the future? Or actually it's totally out of my control. So it's going to end up with a good old quadrant. Nearly everything ends up with a quadrant, doesn't it? So are you optimistic, pessimistic? I've got agency, I can influence what's going to happen, or I've got no influence. So 2 minutes, quick conversation at your table. Where would you put yourself in that sort of quadrant at the moment?
coined the phrase, I'm optimistic, but can you also say something? That's right. Because I believe it is good. I believe that we are going forward. But I'm simple. Some of the stuff like a little tip like
Well, I'm probably the same, except I do believe that we can shape the future.
absolutely.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing
There's a quote from
One more minute.
the guy who Nobel Prize winner who wrote Thinking Fast and Slow. And he said, our ability to predict the future is easily, our inability to predict the future is easily disproven by how readily we explain the past.
So, I'm going to ask for a show of hands here. You've got to choose. You're going to put yourself in one of these quadrants. All right, and just before I do this might influence where you put yourself. But as a population, no, I'm not going to say it. I'll say it afterwards, rather than influence your choices. So are you? Hands up if you are generally optimistic about the future, think you've got a fair degree of influence in it. Hands up if you're in that space. Wow, that's excellent. Hands up if you're in the optimistic space, but actually it's outside of my control. Yeah, so it's not, remember, it's a brawl. You don't have to all be in a thing. Anyone pessimistic about the future, but actually it's still within my control. So things aren't going great, but I can still influence it. No? Anyone pessimistic, outside of my control? No. So interesting, that the reason I stopped myself, but because the general population, and I would suggest you're not the general population, you can take that whichever way you want, but I suggest you're not the general population, is 2/3 of us are more pessimistic than optimistic. So people in the moment think, yeah, I'm half full rather than half empty, but in day-to-day life, we're generally not, because we're hardwired to notice bad more than good. I'm just going to leave that with you, all right? I don't want to say to change your mind. We all want to be, because we think we should be optimistic in many ways, but the reality day-to-day might be quite different. This is from a gentleman called Fred Pollack, who's done a lot in the futurist foresight space. All right, so, and I've very much put myself in the optimistic influence. So yeah, it's not all optimism, not all Pollyanna stuff. It's all going to be good. I don't have to do anything. There's no responsibility there. Actually, yes, I think it can be positive. I call myself a realistic optimist. All right, so I don't think it's all going to be wonderful. We've got some serious choices to make that will influence it. But I'm generally optimistic. The opportunities have never been greater for the vast majority of us. It's never been a safer time in the world, never been more education in the world, etc., etc. Listen to the news, that's not the view you get, but actually it is. There's obviously some places and people not in those spaces, but most of us are in those bits. All right, but this is about influence. Can I make a difference or can't I make a difference? And it's not, say, that's the brawl is, we think we should all be in the top right. Actually, those of you, and probably many of you have done DISC, aware of that, but or similar things, that difference actually is beneficial. All right, because the risk is we all get in our own little bubbles and forget about other spaces. So there's benefit to having people in different opposing perspectives, which links to this one. Came up very recently for me. I can't help but mess with my presentation up until virtually the last minute. I haven't read the book yet now, so I can't say it's a great book, but it's a good title, and I love the power of questions. My coaching background has really brought that even more to me. I like the phrase intellectual humility. I always say there's a thin line between confidence and arrogance. And we've always got to tread that, or some of us have got to tread that line, be confident in what we believe, but not be arrogant, because people don't, that doesn't go down well. And this was quite a nice set of questions, I think, to help all of us think about that. Am I a soldier who defends my position? It's not about never defending your position, but being mindful of that, or am I looking for new and different opinions? The second one is very linked to coaching for me in many ways. Would I rather be right, or would I rather understand? An interesting piece from some of the neuroscience stuff I've done is we can be addicted to being right. We get a bit of a chemical hit, feels good. But when we're right, what happens to the other person? They're wrong. All right, so be mindful. It's not about not defending your position, but being mindful of the impact on others. Yeah, deliberately seeking different views. In the modern world, we've never had access to greater information, but we've never probably been in greater bubbles in many ways because it's filtered. It's all filtered to what we do, what we like, what websites we visit, etc., etc. So we've got to be really mindful that we do seek opposing views. You know, as uncomfortable as some of those are, it's not about agreeing with them, but at least knowing where some people come from. And that was quite a nice challenge. Was it, do I enjoy? I'm not sure I enjoy, but the pleasant surprise of discovering I'm mistaken. But I hope what I bring is one of my strengths, is being curious. So always knowing being aware of things, there's lots of things I don't know. You know, as opposed to being comfortable in what I do know. And I enjoyed that journey personally. So very briefly, we're going to explore this. So that's what I'm going to try and give to you. Some knowledge awareness of what it might look like in the future. Some of the technology particularly that's around, that's on the horizon, some of it near horizon, some a longer term horizon, that might have an impact on the kids you're working with, on the nature of your job, all these different factors. So on the learning, the teaching and the leading. I think there's going to be some influences. So the key bits for me are there. What is it that's on the horizon? To help people be aware of that and decide what they're going to do. And there is absolutely the right to do nothing, isn't there? You don't have to do something. But if you're not, is there someone else that you can draw on who might be able to do some of those things and be aware of those things? So I'm going to give you a big picture overview, a quick dump. There are, I don't want to panic you when I say this because there's certainly not this many slides, but I keep collecting slides. I've got about 400 now of what's emerging just around education and learning. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to take you through 400 slides, you'll never get out of it. So I've tried to pull out the vast majority of the ones that I think are most relevant to you in your environments and on the horizon of that. So this will be a quick dump of stuff, so stay curious about, do you know it, do you not know it, and that's all good, all right? So that's absolutely being known what we know and what we don't know, and just thinking about what might be the implications of some of these things. So there's the really big picture. If you're interested in this space, you know, and I get not everyone is, Frank Diana, I'd recommend. He's an American gentleman. Great post, that's a great visual. So all of you I'm sure are aware of internet, social, mobile, cloud, big data, and probably many of the things in green. Some of you know all of those, some of you might know some of them, and those are the things that are there already. As we start to move into the white, we're getting more and more into the distant future. So the top one, right at the top there, you can see radical life extension. So we won't go down this rabbit hole, but some people are aiming to cure, that'll be their language, age. Yeah, exactly, so cure death, so people don't die. Not sure on that one, in lots of different ways. But people are trying to do that, trying to solve the problem of aging, they would call it. You know, and so interesting bits, and I won't go down that rabbit hole. I'm happy to catch up in breaks and talk about some of those things. The cyborg society, general artificial intelligence. You know, what these mean obviously needs unpacking, and we're not going to do that here and now. And in the middle is all the sorts of factors that are influenced by those. And he does there's an hour presentation on his website that starts to draw out some of those, because obviously you could spend days drawing those out. This is, again, one of my favourite summary slides, really, because we're in an exponential age. And I'm sure you've probably heard it. Exponential is one of those, it becomes a suitcase word. Everyone uses it, throws it out all the time. We don't really get what it means if we're not careful. So I'm going to try and unpack what I mean it to mean. And some of that's where we are. It's a lovely, simple drawing, isn't it? Great website, wait, but why? And that suggests that's where we are at the moment. All right, in terms of the impact of technology and what's going to happen to society going forward. And the trouble with that is, all we can do is look back. And it's fairly gradually linear. And we're linear thinkers. We're designed to think linearly. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of exponential change as opposed to linear change. And I think it has increased rapidly. I was chatting to Fee or to Jenny recently, the smartphone's only been with us 11 years. Now, if someone said it, and as nice as the thought is, I don't have to have it for maybe a day, but a week, a month, suddenly it's become part of who we are. Most of us, if not all of us in this room, isn't it? How would we now operate when we don't have access to things like that? You know, so technology is neither good nor bad. It's how humans use it that make it good or bad. I'm just going to throw that out there as a factor as well as part of that. So here's another way of trying to explain it. So if we did 1 metre, if each stride was 1 metre, 30 metres, we get 30 steps would get us 30 metres. Exponential change, 26 times around the world. All right, so that's how rapidly it doubles. Every time it doubles. So 1 becomes 2, 4, 8, 16. My maths is starting to struggle. 32. All right. So it doesn't. So and this is an even better graphic. It'll just run through. So nothing seems to be happening. You're probably thinking, oh, this Nick's going to talk about all these things. Nothing seems to happen yet. You'll see about now, within potentially 6 years, artificial intelligence will be at the same level as human intelligence. Now that isn't fact. All right, that isn't fact, as much as you might hear or see all the negative things around it. That's potential. But you'll see it goes from very, very slow. So you think, people are talking about it, not a lot is happening. And suddenly it happens really, really quickly. And that's the problem with exponential change, because we look back and think, not a lot's happened. And suddenly it's, massive change. And we're just on the cusp of some of this. And it's not fear. I'm trying to, hopefully not making you fearful around it, because there are huge opportunities to have better lives for people we work with and the students we support. This was, again, I came across this recently, it was quite interesting. So the technology year, so that's how much technology potentially is going to change. So kids entering high school, by the time they leave high school, it'll have improved 32 times. And again, this isn't fact, all right? These are guesses. These are best guesses around this. So coming in at prep, try and get your head around 4,000 times improvement to the technology. All right? Yes, I can't even imagine what that means. Someone's done some work around the iPhone 20, what that might be able to do. I can find that and send that to you if that interests you. It's fascinating as to where it might head. So I'm very much on, and I'm very comfortable being out on the edge. Some of the people I interact with, in the early stages, and I was unsure at first, described what we do as being a bit of a weirdo. And I say I'm very comfortable being a weirdo. An outlier is probably quite a nicer sort of phrase, but it needs people out on the edge to point out what's happening there that might happen in the middle. All right, so it's not about everyone being out there and being across all of this. Absolutely not. No, great if you want to be, but there's no expectation as part of this. So what I'm going to present to you today are opinions and guesses. I quite like that as a framework, the FOG framework, for lots of situations, can't you? Because people often, suggest they are facts, but they're opinions and guesses. And my opinions and guesses are facts, and yours are opinions and guesses. That's how we operate at times, isn't it? You can use that in lots of different frameworks. So this is all about some opinions and lots of guesses. But they're guesses based on some frameworks, and that's what I'm going to share with you as well. Some frameworks to help us try and make sense. What do people like Frank Diana, what do they use? So it's not just, what do I think today? What am I going to write? There are stuff out there, and people do it for a living. And you might think, what a strange job. And, I see it's quite exciting, but living on the fringe of some of those things. So I'm just going to take a whistle-stop tour of some of the headlines that are out there in my world that I sort of think, and particularly ones that might impact in ed support. So this has already happened, so in the UK, 3D printing. So there's also positive bits about 3D printing, purpose-built prosthetics, individualised. And they can do it, and there's a person I've done some work with, so I think the young person has lost an arm or lost part of an arm, and they can then, I'm going out to the disco, I'm going to create one just for the disco. I'm now going to do some athletics, I'm going to create one just for athletics. So talk about individualised, they have a different arm depending on what they're doing. So great, what an amazing choice, to be able to choose those things, but obviously this is something that, what do we do about things like that as part of this? And these are mainly negative, unfortunately, but that's what the press, that's mainly what you get in the news, isn't it? Because if it bleeds, it leads, as someone said to me recently. A horrible thought, isn't it? But it does. We're drawn to horrible things, unfortunately. face scanning and effective. If you want to, so some of these I'm just going to point out, you can the free download, you can play with them. So me pulling a very funny face. Effective, it's a free download app, and you can pull faces and it'll scan and suggest what your emotions are. All right, so it'll pull out sort of a percentage of what sort of, so AI can scan and suggest. Now, lots of arguments about how accurate or not it is, and some of the real problem around biases, because it's generally trained on white males. So if you're not a white male, this tends not to be as accurate, and there's real issues around some of that. But it is, it can start to pick out, you know, how people are feeling as part of that. This is developed in America, but is being widely used in China. All right, where it's starting to look at scanning students in real time and giving feedback. So it classifies their behaviours, and I'll show you pictures in a minute, and gives feedback to teachers, parents, and school leaders in real time. All right, so these things are already out there, so they're not make-up, and there you go. Always like the one, it says distracted, the kid's probably asleep. I think we can all pick that, we didn't need AI to give us that clue. But it's naming them, it's scanning, and deciding whether they are engaged or not. All right, it's interesting, concentration, is that a good indicator? Because you can pretend to be concentrated, couldn't you? Yeah, but it can do that in real time. A lot of these are around artificial intelligence, and a bit just to throw out into your thinking is ethics, ethical use. A lot of these things are making huge advancements in China, and the risk is us in the West say, oh, it's China, unethical. So I'm just going to throw out there, whose ethics though? Whose ethics are right? You know, because it's one of those things. I suddenly thought, yeah, there's no global view of what is ethical. You know, we'll have a view of what is ethical, but there'll probably be some variation in this room if you really got down to know a bit, as would in China. So I'm not saying that's right, but I'm also not saying we're right. So we can get in our own little bubbles around what's right and what's not. By gait, it can analyse if they're likely to be happy, sad, angry. So I'm just tracking movement. It'll start to pick up. A lot of these are starting to be used in America because of, obviously, you know, gun shootings and things like that. Can they pick up someone is in distress before they get to that point? What you do when you pick it up, I don't know, because it's probably too late, unfortunately. You know, and what the expectations are around that. Another one, it's a little device you can see there that picks up the heartbeat. I'm not sure what IBI is, but anyway, it picks up different things. So mainly it's heartbeat and respiration, and from that, it can analyse with 87% accuracy the algorithm of what you are feeling at that moment. So I'm not saying they're good or bad, I'm not saying I'd want them anywhere near me or anything else, but these things are out there, and it's, you know, things that can happen. The point for me around this one is that a good thing? Because there's a reason we get into bad moods. It's feedback to us to do something. So if we're trying to avoid just bad moods forever, too many bad moods isn't great for any of us, we get that. But it's almost suggesting that to get into a bad mood or to get angry or to get cross is bad. And it's too simplistic. It's actually giving us feedback, isn't it? We need to do something or change something. And do we really need that to do that? This was, I don't know how picking up, and it sounds an interesting one, but it's happening already, fecal transplant. Very blunt, they take poo out of someone and they, with a healthy gut, and they implant it in someone's gut to try and have healthier gut health. And there is increasing evidence about the impact of the gut, you know, on all of us in our well-being, you know. But it absolutely starting to see some implications for people with autism. Absolutely not. I've always pushed back when everyone comes up with a cure, but actually can influence the level of autism as part of that. Elon Musk, this is called a brain-computer interface. They're developing this, and they showed it fairly recently. It'll be a small device with lots of robots that insert into your brain. I won't be putting my hand up for an I'm relatively early adopted to tech, but that won't be one of them. Around all of that, his aim is to, so we don't get the AI robots that are going to come and take over the world that you often hear about. You know, that says we really need to make human 2.0, where we have artificial intelligence alongside human intelligence. What possible implications that may or may not have around these things. This is just controlling that robot arm just through brainwaves. All right, so there's nothing else. It's just thinking what it wants the robot to do, and it is then doing that. There's another one, something around ADHD, BCI's brain-computer interfaces, and influencing those, to actually help them. The idea is, again, would you want to walk around with that on your head? But the idea is to help them, from a brain stimulation point of view, minimise the impact of ADHD. This one, you can imagine, again, could be really powerful, couldn't it, about using speech insights from brain activity. So I certainly was very conscious some of the kids I work with didn't have speech, but I'm sure it was in there somewhere. They just couldn't verbalise their thinking. But here's a potential where they can verbalise their thinking. And again, it could be for good or bad. Facebook are developing something that can read your mind. Not sure I'll be, again, not one I'd be sort of volunteering for, given their track record. New type of haptic, so movement, all right, and actually create sensation just from touch in midair. So actually creating some movements and some interfaces. And again, some of these are already out there, aren't they, in the ed support world, that we create music by movement and things like that. And again, some of this, when I saw it, I thought, it's probably not that new, is it? We've already been using some of these sorts of things. It's new to people not in the ed support world, but not so much for that. But it'll get more and more prevalent. So it might take mobile phones off kids, but they'll be in their contact lenses. So we're going to try and take contact lenses off kids, So it's about helping them use it. Bit of a different one, but I thought, again, it was interesting about the immersive tech space, isn't it? That it's a similar impact to having a human visit. A bit scary in some ways, that. I still don't think there's a very important piece in all of us. I'm not about, just implementing tech. The human, I have a hope, belief it actually helps us with the human side even more around all of these things. But the immersive nature of VR is incredible for learning. And we've seen that a lot with kids. I know Richard over there, he's doing a lot, and I'm sure others are as well. But I hope, believe there's actually huge opportunities for teachers and leaders. I've certainly seen tech where you can put on a headset, you can practice your public speaking, and it will analyse in real time your eye contact, your voice, your volume, your ums and your ahs, and all those things. And you can do that in private rather than having to practice it in front of people, which is very, stressful for most of us in those situations. And so great. So it's about design, using VR design. So again, huge opportunities to lower a lot of the barriers that are suddenly in place. Tech is coming along that's going to significantly change the opportunities for kids, a lot of the kids you work with. And that's the real positive spin on it, but absolutely believe that. And great opportunities around all of that. I couldn't help but put this one in because it usually makes everyone cringe. It's been done in China. The first autonomous surgeon did some tooth work. But again, it's interesting, isn't it? Because most people go, oh, I don't want to do that. Yet we trust a human who's more likely to make a mistake than something that's programmed to be absolutely accurate. I'm not saying you should, I'm not saying I'd be volunteering, but we are, again, we trust humans, yet the humans are more likely to make mistakes than, if it's programmed accurately, obviously. And that's down to humans. Exactly. We are the weak link, And a final one. So, this is just carry it around their neck, and actually it triggers. So again, you're going to wear a headband. I'm not saying who wants to wear a headband at the moment. It's tracking your brain waves, and when it notices certain brain waves, it release like an aromatherapy smell to help calm you. Good, bad, indifferent. It's interesting, though, isn't it? You can again start to influence what you want and how you do stuff. In all of those bits. So, going to share that was a quick dump of some of the things that are out there, and all of those things are already happening, all right? So they're not guesses, they're already happening. What the impact will be is absolute guesswork at this stage. And again, there's huge opportunities, but there are real concerns about it, and that's where the purpose of doing things like this is to make sure educators are those who want to be at the forefront of some of these things as they emerge. So we're doing it for the right reasons, as opposed to just the money, because that's primarily what drives, the corporate world as part of that. So I'm going to share some frameworks and tools that hopefully might be useful. And you can use them in lots of ways, not just around the tech, you can use them in lots of ways, but it is very much about, you know, coaching quadrupled, I guess. Very much love my coaching, I still do coaching, which is mainly relatively short term, isn't it? And I'm not saying that's not useful, absolutely is in a busy world, but this is how might we make sense of things even further into the future. And so this is partly just separating the difference. All right, so there's the weird stuff. So I'm very happy to be a few people in the weird stuff and sharing some of these things at the moment. And trends are when it starts to be more common. People are chatting at barbecues around it. It's in lots of press. You're seeing more of it. And here is one framework. And I say I'm happy to share this PowerPoint anyway. But the next slide has some key ways of trying to make sense of it. So one is interpretation. So is it a weak signal or is it a strong signal? So this is signals analysis for stuff that is, you know, a bit further out. I'm going to take you through an activity to see how good your weak signal analysis is in a minute as a table group, just to make it a bit more real for you as part of that. How is the interpretation? Is it well understood or is it still emerging as part of that? Media, it is a strong indicator. How prevalent is that? I say in my world, I get lots of these things because my bubble is deliberately following stuff in this space. And I've got to be conscious that sometimes it's strong in my world, but it isn't in most people's world. Conversation with my wife recently, I said, yeah, I haven't explained some of these things. I read about them most days. Blockchain, for example, what does that mean in education? I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. But I've got a sense of where it might head, but understandably most people haven't, because they're busy doing day-to-day stuff, and that's into the future. Observability. So the example here is climate change. All right, so weak signals are through the ice core, they've been able to go back and actually, without going off on this, again, rabbit hole, at the moment, if you go back through, because Earth goes through warmer and colder periods of time, we actually should be in an ice age. If you follow the trends, we should be in an ice age. What we've done, this is my view, not starting a major discussion here. My view is that we've warmed it. Well, not just my view, but we've warmed it to a perfect time for us. But unfortunately, of course, we haven't then stopped because we didn't do it consciously. It's suddenly rapidly warming. So there are things we can do. I absolutely believe that. It's not, forget, let's all get on a spaceship and leave. I want to do things here and now. But those are sorts of things, yeah? What's happening and some of those things. And whether we've caused it or not at the end of the day, final rant around this, we're noticing things, aren't there? There's certain observable factors that we can't say it was the hottest July ever in the world. Just gone. Probably not here in Perth or in Brisbane particularly, but it's in most people live in the Northern Hemisphere. Those things are there. So this is the three things. So the fourth bit I'll come to in a minute. How observable is it? How many media artifacts? How much do you see it in the media? How stable and established is the understanding? So not just because it's on Facebook means it's true. Sorry for those who love Facebook. I'm on Facebook, but so who's telling you? We say to our kids, just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. So where is that evidence coming from as part of that? So in your table groups, I'm going to give you three different things, all right? Three different areas to consider. You've got to rate 1 to 5 across those three. So at least one person on the table, take a picture or make a quick note of those. How observable is it? How much is it in the media? And research. How much is the scientific research from your understanding around these topics? 5, loads of it. Strong signal, 1 of it, weak signal. All right, so the maximum you can end up with is 15. The minimum is 3. Okay? So, 3D printed houses. I'm going to give you 30 seconds because I want to get on to other stuff here. 3D printed houses. 15 is it's here, it's already happening, it's guaranteed. We're all going to be living in 3D printed houses. 3 is never heard of it, nothing in the media, etc. So 30 seconds on your table. Come up with a number. A quick conversation.
Wonderful across these 3 criteria. So how observable is it? How many media artifacts? Is it established and well understood? Well, I know it is. So 15 for us. But when you're looking at the actual science, observability, I think it is. I think there's been quite a few articles.
Yes, there has. There's been something in the media that have been, but the pictures that have been good.
Well, I think his trick is looking at the evidence.
10 seconds. Best guess. Best guess.
But yeah, I reckon for us, yeah, with that word.
right, so you're competing against a group of futurists. All right, so this isn't my data, my information. A group of futurists from around the world were all asked, using that same thing, what did they think? And it's a couple of years ago now, so these numbers would definitely change in my view. So 3D printed houses, I'm just going to do it on a scaling. Any tables that said between 3 and 6? Okay, so table 6 and 10. 10 and 13. Above 13. Right, few. So the number, this was a couple of years back, so I reckon it'd be higher now, it's 13. So the reason I put this one in, because in WA there is a company that does robotic putting of, building of houses. All right, bricklaying, that's the word I was looking for, the words I was looking for. Right, doesn't mean we're all going to live in those things, but there's already examples of this happening. And again, it does depend on what media you view. Their media is going to be similar to my media. So it's all opinions, this is, remember? It's not facts, there are opinions as part of it. So sentient artificial intelligence. So sentient is feeling artificial intelligence. All right, so artificial intelligence that senses and feels. So between 3 and 15. 30 seconds, off you go.
All it is the computing capacity.
15 seconds, best guesses. So, 2 tables that said between 3 and 6. One table. 6 and 10. 10 and 13. Higher than 13. So, and the key word here was sentient. All right, so 6. And I would say that it's fairly, my view would be it's still fairly similar. It would generally, the media overplays what AI can do. It's very, very clever at very, very narrow things. So it can beat us at chess, at Go, and all the computer sort of games, but it can't make a decision about that. It's trained around it's called narrow artificial intelligence. And that's about pumping as much information as you can into it for it to see patterns and things. There's some interesting stuff around that, particularly with Go, and there's I was about to say a fascinating documentary, but fascinating to me, put it on that lens, where it looked at, actually it came up with some moves that humans wouldn't have come up with. So I'm a big believer that technology, particularly in the relatively near future, can augment us. So not about replacing it, actually give us some perspective. I thought, I hadn't thought of that. What might that mean? But we'll still have the final choice, but it'll give us some choices that we probably won't come up with as humans as part of that. But the sentient bit is general artificial intelligence, which some people say will never happen. I'm cautious about never, the word never. Some people, Ray Kurzweil, people are really into that. He's made lots of judgments, or made lots of premonitions, isn't quite the right word, but views of what will happen. He reckons by the late 2020s it'll be there. Singularity, it's called singularity is near, where artificial intelligence becomes more intelligent than human intelligence. Fascinating bit for me is why do we want to create something that, and a lot of it is robotics that look like us. We're a funny species. Why do we want everything to look like us and act like us? Why don't we create something that just helps us be better at being human, but maybe too simple. All right, next one. People enhanced through devices and machines added to the human body. All right, so machines that are added. So it's not just the not a good example, but don't think of the Blade Runner. So gentleman for that, for lots of reasons, not a good example. But this is so machines that are added to humans. All right, so 3 to 15, 30 seconds, off you go.
you've got ones, zeros, ones, zero. With the quantum, once they get down to that level, what they've discovered is that because it's 3 dimensions.
15 seconds.
So all of a sudden, it can be a 1 and a 0 at the same time. So it's gone from, that's effectively times 130.
All right, tables 3 to 6. No, 6 to 10. You're very optimistic. Right, 10 to 13. Higher than 13. There you go. So you reckon it's really wide. So they'd say 9. Now, I would say it's a bit higher than that now. But I don't think there's loads of stuff around. Certainly isn't anyone that I know has had nano machines implanted within them and operating. I'm not saying it was just that, but machines, thinking machines that add value. So again, it's probably more. And you might be much more accurate than I am, because I think some of these are more likely to occur in the ed support world than they are in the mainstream world, because of disability, to help people get over those disabilities. All right, final one. Through life gene editing. So you can go in and edit your genes to change elements of who you are. All right, 3, weak, 15, very strong.
It's not there yet. No, 9.
Yes. This is of humans, all right, of humans. Quite an important differentiator.
They can, but they can't. Certain things, I thought they'd identify. Otherwise, why aren't they doing it already? Isn't that what that man in China said he could do?
Yeah.
And everyone went
15 seconds.
ethically.
All right, so 3 to 6. All right, a few more, 3 to 6, 6 to 9, 10 to 13, above 13. All right, so the number there is 7. So it's about halfway at this stage. Now, so that is a real website. I haven't been to it, I haven't bought anything, just to put that out there, where you can get CRISPR-Cas9, which is the most well-known gene editing sort of approach for mice. Why you'd want to do that is I don't know. There you are. I can knock out, knock in, point mutation, and you can start to. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. Is the other thing I'd throw out there. And a final bit before we go into some more frameworks here. If you haven't already felt uncomfortable, this next bit is a good chance it will make you feel uncomfortable. I'm not saying I agree with what I'm about to say. So I was at a special ed conference over in Queensland not long ago, and I was hearing from someone in a department who was saying increasing numbers of kids with ASD, and the likelihood is going to continue to increase. So with my knowledge, I know potentially they could edit out ASD. They could edit out, so ASD, for example, maybe even FASD, could be edited out. Again, I'm not saying I would want that to happen. But then which ones do we edit out? Which ones don't we edit out? The ethical things, do we just leave everything alone? That's where the big ethical conversations and debates that really need to be had, and it's making sure the right people are at those conversations. But that's a really challenging one to think about, isn't it? Would you, if you had the choice, to do that in birth? So they've already done it in utero, some of these things. In China, it wasn't supposed to happen, but it did happen about HIV virus, trying to make sure the babies weren't born with that, because I think the father or the mother, can't remember, one of them. But that was done without knowing all the implications. When you start messing with one bit of the human body, what happens? What are the implications of all of that? Right? But these things are already being explored. I'm not saying about ASD, I'm not saying that is, but the idea of editing. Designer babies is the headline. They can choose what hair colour, what height. Yes. All right, I'll leave you so. If it didn't make you feel uncomfortable, I probably did right. I've done that. So, some frameworks to try and make sense. That was a quick whistle stop. There's lots of other possibilities. So I'm going to give you, conscious of time, and I don't want to deliberate pun, eat into your morning tea. Reflections from that very brief experience, from the conversations on your table. How do your perceptions of change differ from your conversation on your table? How much should you rely on a consensus, and what if any, should you rely on experts' knowledge of the future? So 2 minutes reflection just on that exercise of putting something up, what your thoughts were, what other people's thoughts were, and then the outcomes that what I shared from experts in the futures world. 2 minutes, then we'll move on.
Ethics is the biggest thing.
Yeah, it's behind all of that.
Yes, yes. And it makes you realise how much ethics play a part in decision making. And until really recently, there wasn't an ethical framework around school leadership until the Blitz study. And now it's a good framework, and people could adopt it, but not enough people know about it. But it will be on my website. It's part of my lead now. And it's not part of any standard, principle standard, something like
There's the principal standards, developing self and others.
Yeah.
But there's no caring for self or knowing self.
no, because it wasn't true. 10 years ago, it was developed.
And we all know that knowing self is the key to leadership.
Yeah.
It's that ongoing conversation with yourself,
That reflection.
that understanding.
So, I'm going to do a quick share, and it is relatively quick, folks, conscious of time. But as I say, you'll have access to all of this. I'll briefly explain a range of frameworks you can use. Feel free to take pictures, but I'll make sure you get access to these. And the idea is not to use all of them, is to think about which ones, as you would do anyway, as leaders, which ones make sense. How do we start to make sense of what might happen in the world? So one is an organisation I do some work with called futurewe.org. And this is a framework that can help us make sense of where are we at individually, team-wise, school-wise, with the students. Where are we currently at? What are we doing well in these different areas? What might we need to get better and improve? And it's so there's you can see it's bit.ly/future with a space survey. All right, just go and do a very simple one. Just a free self-assessment. You do that and you get a report at the end of it. That can be one way of doing that. And I say I'll send all this through if you don't have a chance to get that down or get a picture of it that you can do. But frameworks that help us make sense are important, aren't they? Given all those stuff I've just thrown at you, it can be just the easiest option is to put our heads down, put our heads in the sand and ignore it. I don't decry any of those who do, because you're always so incredibly busy in the now. All right, and that's why I made mention of Fee's work about that framework. It is we need to help people make sense of where next as well. Otherwise, we're so lost in the now, and I understand why people are. Here's a Futures Triangle, it's called. All right, I'm thinking about what's a plausible future. I'm going to share you with the Futures cone in a minute, which will, again, is different for different purposes. What's the pull of the future? What are our visions and aspirations around what we might do? And this is absolutely not just about technology anyway. These are futures, foresight, thinking frameworks, right? That can be helpful and useful in lots of ways. And I quite like the language here. The push of the present, unavoidable external. So without having to go at the department, what is it that external factors are pushing? Whether you want them to or not, it's good to acknowledge those bits. And again, important, what's the weight of history? You've got to be mindful, not that we throw away and give up on things that are there, but is it holding us back from changing some beliefs? And that's so hard, isn't it? I read a lovely phrase recently, it made me smile, that one good thing of changing your mind means you've got one. All right, that's that scout and soldier bit, isn't it? The risk is we just bunker down and get harder and harder and more fixed. We've got to be that intellectual curiosity. Didn't say that, did it? But that phrase, humility, intellectual humility is important. Because we're going to get proven wrong, and that's not helpful or useful. And saying we don't know, that's hard, isn't it, for people we're leading? But that's an important thing. Don't know. Let's try and make sense of it. Is important for people. Here's the futures cone. So the middle one, the projected future, if nothing changed. All right? My throw out to you there is that I can guarantee that's probably the least likely to happen. Because even though you look back, things have changed, haven't they? You know, I'll talk in the workshop around, changes happening all the time. There's going to be some changes. Plausible, could happen. Yeah, and these can be useful frames to think about. Probable, likely to happen. Possible, might happen. Preferable, want to happen, should happen. There's got to be different lenses to view whatever you want to view through. And as uncomfortable as it possibly is, the preposterous is good to think about sometimes. For example, where would we sit, what would we do if, I'm not saying it should, or would, or will, gene editing comes in and starts to remove whole swathes of your current clientele? Yes, not a nice feeling, is it? Really a bit uncomfortable there. Oh, what are we going to do? You know, those near retirement think, oh, I can just retire. But a lot of people here are not near retirement. But, you know, and I'm not saying those should happen or will happen. Yeah, the facts, opinions, guesses. A lot of these are opinions and guesses. And just because we can doesn't mean we should. Scenario planning. So this is the last one I'm going to share. I'm just going to finish on a short clip that demonstrates how the failings of technology before we head out to morning tea. So Professor Sohail Inyatullah is the chair of UNESCO Futures Studies. He's done some great stuff around this, and scenarios. Scenarios aren't new to us, are they, that language? But he suggests good to identify 4 scenarios. And again, you can do that within as a school, you can do that as an organisation. He's worked with massive, UNESCO, big organisations to help them make sense of that. Because if we don't make sense of where we want to head, then we won't head in that direction. This is about influencing the future we want. We've got to get on the same page to identify what is that future to start off with. And this isn't 1 year, this isn't 3 years, this isn't 5 years. This can be, but for me, I'm suggesting 10 years. I know a group of you won't be in ed support at that stage, but we need to help people prepare what might be part of that voice. So what might no change look like then in 10 years' time? I'm saying to answer that now, but you go through that process. What might marginal change? So we're just tweaking at the edges, which is primarily what's happening, hasn't it? If you look back, it's been marginal changes primarily. There might be a big change in some spaces. Adaptive change, so there's change and then we change in relation to the change. Right, so that and then we change, and that's probably been true to some extent. And good to consider that proportion, that radical change. And then out of that, those 4 scenarios, as a group, as an individual, as a cohort, as a team, you decide which is your preferred one. And what are you going to do that might influence that to come about? All right, so it isn't about saying this is the one you should aim for. It depends on the circumstances. You identify, and then you start to make decisions that influence it in the way you want to influence it. Yeah, so things like those tools, frameworks, help us enable it. They enable the future you want to bring about. All right? Yeah, we can't make that happen. We can't guarantee it. Not as simple as that. You all know that well. But little decisions we take day by day influence, have a ripple effect. So all these little decisions, it can lead to very big decisions at the end of the day. So one short video that brings out all the problems that technology might bring about. And voice is going to be an increasing access. For some kids, obviously not. But for many of us will be. And then just going to leave the slide that will share some ways of staying in touch if you want to stay in touch in terms of with me, but also what's happening in the future. And if you don't, all I'd throw out to you is there someone in your school organisation who does? It doesn't need everyone to do it, but it needs some people to do it. Start.
Play jazz.
Playing jazz.
Smoothie.
Making smoothie.
Calendar.
No meetings today. Remember, tandläkare at 9:30.
Fire off.
Fire off.
Open door.
Door open.
Så ska vi sätta en till.
Fire. Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open door.
Repeat that.
Open door.
I didn't understand that.
Hey, open door.
Play on the floor.
Get over the door. Open the door. Open the door.
Error.
Hey there. To the right. Open door. Open door.
Yeah, so it's not all good, is it? Yeah, low tech is certainly absolutely the right answer at times. Range of ways, folks, to stay in contact with me or stuff I'm doing, particularly in this space. All right, some of you know me from other spaces too. And as I say, I'm happy to share all of this that I've shared today with you in appropriate means. Thank you very much for listening. Good to be with you again. Thank you.